I want to talk a little bit about how our DNA communicates with us. I take it as a given that just as the need to survive is attributed to the individual, that we can attribute a need to survive to the DNA. Now, by DNA, I don't mean literally this one molecule, DNA, but really the whole mechanism through which the DNA operates. Now, for a human, our survival is individual. If I individually survive to a natural death, then that's the definition of my survival. But what about the survival of the DNA? That's different. That's about procreation. Now, our own personal survival tends to include procreation. And how is this so? Well, the DNA manipulates us a bit, right? The DNA wants us to procreate, and instead of reasoning with us, it gives us the feeling of lust. So we're driven, and we incorporate our lust into our personal ideas of survival, into our individuality. And it's the same thing with hunger. We don't have a rational thought from our subconscious saying, oh, you should get some food or else you're going to die. We feel pains of hunger. The same thing with pain in general. Theoretically, we don't ever want to feel pain, but that wouldn't suit the purpose of the DNA because it wouldn't help us survive. We need to feel pain so that we can react to it. So again, the DNA, instead of rationally reasoning with us, hey, your hand's burning, that won't be good for you, take your hand out of the fire, it just gives us pain, and we whip our hand out of the fire of our own free will. So this is how the DNA is communicating with us. It's manipulating us, and it's sort of hard, prima facie, to know what a particular urge is trying to manipulate us to do in the terms of the survivability of the DNA. I mean, there's not a lot directly in lust, as I've said before, that indicates that it's all really about family values and procreating. The DNA is much more satisfied just to give us this drive that we follow, and even if the lust backfires, well, we're just an individual to the DNA. The DNA has 6 billion individuals, and it'll just roll the dice. And if some of us find that our lust backfires for us, that's our individual problem. And as long as it works overall, then that's in the DNA's best interest. So I'm curious if you have thoughts about this, about the best interest of the DNA versus the best interest of individuals, about how the DNA is manipulating us as individuals, and ultimately how much we should willingly look out for the best interests of the DNA, in other words, the survivability of the species. How much as an individual should we master that? I mean, it occurs to me that if we mastered consciously handling our wills in an appropriate way, then yeah, we wouldn't need pain. I mean, if we always pulled our hand out of the fire just as quick without pain, just from the knowledge that it was damaging us, then we wouldn't need pain. If we wanted to have our species survive intellectually, we wouldn't necessarily need to be driven by lust, and we could get control of those urges. And indeed, I think this is one of the purposes of being enlightened and finding a bigger frame of reference. If we expand our frame of reference to the biosphere of the earth, in other words, to all of the things that share our DNA, this is a way for us not to have to be subject to the manipulative emotions that the DNA installs in us. We can look beyond those and evolve better and more refined urges that are not as crude as the ones the DNA seems to have been forced to rely on so far.